Can't believe that these words are passing my lips. But there is good news from the modelers about the COVID-19 pandemic. You heard me right. Cases will plummet in November, even without Plan B restrictions, according to modelling seen by the government. Ministers are thought to be holding back from introducing restrictions such as compulsory face masks, working from home and vaccine passports, after seeing projections from several groups which show infections declining rapidly within weeks. One model in particular from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine suggests cases will soon peak before falling steeply in the winter months, even without the use of a Plan B set of measures. Now, at the start of the pandemic, disastrously inaccurate modelling predicted 500,000 deaths, which fuelled this ruinous and, in my view, ineffective set of COVID measures. All too often, the graphs of COVID predictions versus actual cases has been as consciously uncoupled as Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow. Crap modelling has been a catalyst for so much of the damage that we're dealing with now. But, of course, a stopped clock is right twice a day. And it appears this new optimism about where we are in the pandemic is justified, which is why policies like COVID passports, which would divide our society and not stop transmission of the virus, must now be scrapped. And it's time to reboot and recalibrate the vaccination programme, moving away from an obsession with everyone getting jabbed to a focused approach on the most vulnerable, with jabs and boosters for anyone that wants them. And discrimination against unvaccinated NHS workers must end. Notwithstanding the fabulous immunity that many unvaccinated people have as a result of having had COVID and recovered, it's clear that as we enter an inevitable winter crisis, we must attract and hire staff, not fire them, as a result of this bizarre vaccine ideology. And I would lift the ban on unvaccinated care home workers from doing their job, taking care of vulnerable people. A far greater threat to a care home is a lack of staff, not unvaccinated employees. How ironic that opposition voices who have been pushing hard for Plan B already have to eat their words as cases are now falling. Yes, daily COVID infections in Britain have fallen again, and deaths are also down. The Department of Health reported 36,657 new cases in the last 24 hours, down a quarter on that figure last week, and the second day in a row that there has been a week-on-week drop. Cases had risen for 18 days prior to Sunday, so it's looking good. The disappointment of those pushing for Plan B at seeing cases fall was palpable, because there are so many in the medical and scientific establishments and in the media who don't want this to end. They got a taste for fear, a taste for panic, a taste for control, and they don't want to give it up. It offers too many an almost pornographic pleasure. Sajid Javid struck the right tone when he started the job as Health Secretary after the other guy left, the government's chipolata smuggler-in-chief, CCTV sex bomb, Matt Hancock. Sajid Javid came into the job and said, "We've got to learn to live with the virus." And this latest, more credible modelling demonstrates there will be no excuse not to restore our liberties, get back to normal, and set the country back on a path to recovery. Forget Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, Plan D. The only plan the government should have now is to end this hellish nightmare. A paper written by broadcaster Trevor Phillips and released by the Policy Exchange think tank on Monday claimed there was a growing trend to alter public history and heritage without due process. They went on to say too many institutions are rushing to please a vocal minority when it comes to changing history. And it argues that decision makers should not give in to pressure groups and other activists. Now, in my view, this country is under intellectual, cultural and social attack from an ideological rump of hard-left bullies who want to deny basic human biology, who want to cancel great works of art, literature, television, film and music, and they want to tear down statues which have been there for decades or centuries. And now they want to tip X out and rewrite history. How dare the woke Taliban, not satisfied with decolonising Shakespeare and cancelling the Rolling Stones' early hits, How dare they attempt to retell the story of this country and the world? It's not in the gift of any one generation, particularly a cabal of blue-haired, nose-ringed, lettuce-chewing extremists, to reframe human history for their own narrow political ends. Because history is just that, his story. It's a record of the past, dating back to the beginning. History is not opinion. It's events, moments, stories, anecdotes, experiences, victories, triumphs, and yes, catastrophic losses. And it's not there to be hijacked by anyone. We are custodians of the human story, and you can't change the words on the basis that you don't like what you're reading. Holocaust denial, to use an extreme example, is the most horrific lie, an evil crime in itself. And Holocaust denial is a criminal offence in Germany. Because the Germans rightly understand that they need to protect the truth around that most horrendous chapter in their history. But whether it's a battle, a war, an election, a coronation, a storm, or a pandemic, history belongs to the world, and it belongs to every human that has ever lived. Anyone that thinks they can tear out the pages and copy and paste their own interpretation should have the book thrown at them. The government have got a fight on their hands, and it's one worth fighting. It's a hill to die on. Because in time, the public will get sick of this if they're not sick already. I believe that soon elections will be won and lost around these culture wars and this assault on our country. It's time to consign these woke warriors themselves to the history books.